Hi, I'm Jason Hong, and I'm a professor in the Human Computer Interaction Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. And today I'd like to share with you my thoughts about privacy in the age of smart devices. Now, I've been working on smart devices, sensor based systems, and privacy for about 20 years now, and I believe that in the near future, our smart devices are going to know everything about us. They're going to know how well we're sleeping, they're going to know how green we are, they're going to know whether we're depressed or not as well too. So this is probably leading to lots of questions for you. How did we get here, and what does this all mean for you and for society? So let's start with that first question. How did we get here? So if we rewind back to the 1980s and 90s, this is what computers used to look like. Desktop computers really took up your entire desk. And they had a gigantic monitor, keyboard, and mouse. And they only came in one color, which is ugly. But if we jump back to today, this is what smart devices look like now. We have smart watches, we have smart glasses, smart speakers, and yes, we even have smart toilets that bring new meaning to the term computer input and output. Now, I believe that these smart devices offer us tremendous opportunities for society. They are allowing us to understand human behavior at a scale and fidelity never before possible. And I believe that these kinds of technologies will enable us to build amazing things to help us with healthcare, understanding our cities, and also our physical safety too. The problem is that these exact same smart technologies are leading to many new kinds of privacy problems. Every week we see news articles like these. Top Catholic priest resigns after phone data tracked to Grindr. What happened is that some people bought data from Grindr and other places and found this priest's data inside of it and then outed him, and that as a result, he was forced to resign. Next headline, Airbnb refunds guest who found indoor cameras during his family's stay. It turns out that this news article is about a professor whose office is next door to mine, and his family did exactly what this says. They were at an Airbnb, and after a few hours, they discovered that this camera was in the living room. And this last article, stalked within your own home. Woman says abusive ex used smart home technology against her. So after this couple had broken up, the ex, actually tried to search the Alexa records, the smart speaker records, so knowing what she was searching for, and it was also monitoring when she came home and when she left. Now, if privacy were easy, we wouldn't be having so many of these kinds of headlines. So why is privacy so hard? Why haven't we solved it already? So one of the big reasons why privacy is so hard is that the exact same data and devices can be used to help us as well as to harm us. And it depends heavily on the context and how it's used. So this picture on the left shows Apple's AirTags. And these are Bluetooth beacons that are used you can attach them to your luggage, your keys, or even your bicycle. So it makes it easy to find them if you lose them or if they're stolen. The problem is, on the right side, you can see all these headlines about how these AirTags are being used to stalk people, as well as to help car thieves identify cars that they want to steal later. So that's just one of the reasons why privacy is hard, but there's many others too. Another reason why privacy is hard is that there aren't many clear best practices. So for example, this picture shows you the New York Times privacy policy, and it's about 25 pages or so. The problem is that these kinds of privacy policies are still the state of the art for how we convey privacy information to people. But of course, nobody reads these things. The only people I know who reads these are lawyers and people in my classes because I assign it to them as a reading assignment. And here are other reasons why privacy is hard. The technical capabilities are rapidly growing every single day. We have advances in sensors, storage capabilities, networking, and machine learning. So respectively, this makes it easier to collect data, to store it and query it, to share with other organizations, and also to make lots of inferences about people. Business models are also pushing people towards a lot more data collection. So there's a simple chain of reasoning here. More data means better services. So more data means better speech recognition, better search capabilities, better recommendations, and so on. But the problem is that more data also means more targeted ads that follow you around as you go around the internet, as well as companies that are selling your data. So there's a term here I would like you to know about called post-purchase monetization. So the idea here is that if you want to go buy a smart TV, the prices are actually surprisingly low these days, but that's because these new smart TVs are trying to collect data about you, and the manufacturers are trying to resell that data. So all this combined is part of what people are calling surveillance capitalism, so making money off of people's data. But it's not just corporations that are interested in all this data too. The governments also are too, because it makes it easier for them to monitor what citizens are doing. And the last reason why privacy is hard is that our expectations of privacy can change a lot over time. So I want to tell you about two examples of what I mean by this. In 1890, two lawyers, Warren and Brandeis, published what is perhaps one of the most influential law articles in law. And the title of this is called The Right to Privacy. They defined privacy as the right to be let alone. And they were talking about these kinds of newfangled cameras that could take pictures of people unaware in about 30 seconds. Okay. Now, what I think is really interesting about this is if we look at it from the modern perspective, a lot of the risks that Warren and Brandeis talked about in the article still exist today. People can still take pictures of people unaware. But our expectations have also evolved too. So for example, today we now have Instagram, and we have lots of people who want to take pictures and share them with other people. Our social expectations of what is appropriate and not appropriate for taking pictures has also evolved. There are also laws that help regulate how pictures are used. And we also have really interesting technical kinds of feedback as well too. So for example, in South Korea, cameras are mandated to make a loud noise, a shutter noise, whenever you take a picture. So that way, everybody around you knows if a picture's been taken. So that will help sort of disincentivize people from taking pictures maliciously. So again, all the risks that I mentioned in 1890 still exist, but the key idea here is that society's expectations have also evolved in ways that would likely be very surprising to people in 1890. The other example I want to share with you is Facebook's newsfeed. So in 2006, Facebook rolled out newsfeed. So the way Facebook used to work is that you would have to go to each individual person's page to see their status updates. What newsfeed did is it actually aggregated all those so you can view it in one place. Now what's interesting is that when newsfeed first came out, there was a huge negative reaction to it. A lot of people said they hated it, and they even formed groups saying that they wanted this feature removed. However, Facebook stayed the course, and it turned out that people started liking this feature. And I bet you that today, if Facebook tried to remove newsfeed, people were probably up in arms about this. So again, sort of the key idea here is that predicting privacy concerns is actually really, really hard. So I want to come to the last part of this talk, which is what can you do about privacy? So if you are a member of a product team, there's actually a lot of laws and guidelines that you need to be aware of. So for example, there's GDPR, that's the General Data Protection Regulations in the European Union. There's the CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act, COPPA, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and there's also a lot of laws related to audio and video. There's also guidelines from the Federal Trade Commission, from Apple, Google, and so on. And you have to comply with these laws and guidelines, otherwise you're going to face a lot of fines or getting your app removed from these app stores. Now, there's, again, lots of these kinds of laws and guidelines. What I'm about to offer you are a distillation of this. I worked really hard and tried to distill this down into two main kinds of principles. I also want to caveat that this is not legal advice, but rather practical design considerations. So the first one is consider the worst case scenarios in your design. How can you prevent data leaks from happening? And how can you detect and respond to data leaks if they do happen? What happens if there's abusive partners who are trying to misuse your technologies against their intimate partner? How can you prevent those from happening? And how do you detect and respond to this? And same thing with stalkers and with trolls. If you have these malicious actors, How do you prevent these things from happening, and how do you detect and respond to them? The second thing I would offer you is follow the golden rule. The golden rule is pretty much pervasive in all the world's religions. So treat other people the same way that you would like to be treated. And if we use a data privacy version of this is, if you are a user of your system, how would you like to be treated? So we might also think about some pragmatic aspects of this. So does the data collection and data use match your expectations? Does it make sense to you if you are a naive user of your system? Do you feel that you're getting proportionate value out of using your system for given the amount of data that's being shared? And do you feel that the data is being adequately protected? And now I want to look at this exact same question. What can you do about privacy, but this time as an individual? So there's three things I would suggest for you to look at. The first one is learn a lot more about privacy and how to protect yourself. We have so many of these really major issues that are happening right now with respect to face recognition, smart devices, tracking, and AI technologies. And so obviously technology people have a lot to offer here in terms of how these things are built. But I really want to emphasize that we really need people from all kinds of backgrounds to help out. So we also need people with legal expertise who also know a lot about psychology, economics, design, and so on to really help out here. The second thing I would suggest here is use what you know to help others around you. So your family and your friends, so help them do configurations of their apps and also help them be more aware of these privacy issues. But also think about other things too, like for example, women's shelters, people who are trying to escape intimate partner violence, and people who might also need help in terms of configuring their devices. And the last thing I'd suggest here is help expose privacy problems. So I have three examples here. On the left side is Privacy Grade. This is a website that my colleagues and I built. What we did is we downloaded 1 million free apps from the Android Play Store, and we analyzed them for privacy issues, and we assigned a grade of A, B, C, or D to all of these. And this actually had a really positive influence in terms of what Google is doing, as well as what app developers were doing. The second example is a website that's called Please Rob Me. And the idea of this website is it was trying to raise people's awareness that all this social media was collecting so much of our location data, and a lot of people weren't aware of this. So the idea was that every time a person posted a photo or checked into some kind of location, it would be a signal that this person was not at home, and then please rob me. So this website, it doesn't really operate anymore, but it was a really great example of raising people's awareness and got a lot of these technology companies to change their data collection behaviors. And the last example is a journalist named Kashmir Hill, and she does a really fantastic job of trying to raise people's awareness of these kinds of privacy issues and exposing these kinds of invisible data collection. So here on this slide, I have a lot of pointers to additional kinds of readings. So I'm going to recommend two things here. One is this really fantastic article from the New York Times called How Companies Learn Your Secrets. So this is the really famous article where a father learned that his daughter was pregnant because of targeted advertising. There's also a new episode of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver on data brokers. And it is a really fantastic kind of episode that really exposes all the number of organizations that are collecting and selling your data. There's also a lot of privacy journalists and advocates here. So I mentioned Kashmir Hill. Ashkan Soltani is a technologist who has a lot of amazing work. There's also some advocacy groups, the Electronic Frontier Foundation and Center for Democracy and Technology. And lastly, if you're interested in becoming a professional here, there's also the International Association of Privacy Professionals. And the last references here are links to let you see what your Google settings are, as well as how to download your Facebook data and to see what they know about you. I'd like to end with some concluding thoughts here. Privacy is a major societal scale problem, and there's many legal reasons why you should care about it. There's also product adoption reasons that if you don't address privacy in a legitimate way, people just won't use your technologies. But there's also moral reasons why we should care about privacy, that we should be treating people as an ends and not a means. You also might be feeling really overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. And I want to assure you that there are really simple steps that you can take to protect yourself and others too. So start with the settings for your smartphone, your web browser, and your most used apps. But I'd also encourage you to think about what you can do with respect to your everyday activities. So this includes things like your class projects, the research you do, the products you design, and the blogs and videos that you create, that you can also raise people's awareness of these kinds of issues. So I want to end by saying that these kinds of smart technologies offer tremendous potential for society, but only if we can legitimately address these privacy concerns. So my call to action for you is, let's make sure we create a world that we would all want to live in.